welcome back to another episode of the Paranormal Journals right here on Black Mass Paranormal. So, I got a freaking crazy email. So, one of my subscribers, and he asked to be anonymous, had sent me an encounter that he had in the Arizona desert. Now, I know this channel is typically focused on the Appalachian side of the paranormal, but this is an encounter that I just couldn't ignore. So Jim said one Saturday night he was sitting at his house. He was kind of bored. He was waiting on some friends, and he decided that he was going to go out in the desert and pop off some rounds. He heads out to a location that he's pretty familiar with. He said he's been there and shot there before, that, it wasn't anything out of the normal for him. But he said that the location was pretty far out in the middle of nowhere. He said it was about 20 miles from the nearest settlement. Aside from the occasional, mobile homes that were scattered along the way, there was essentially nothing else out where he was. So he brought a total of 12 different guns with him. Guns that he had been shooting with, pretty much his entire life. He knew each one of them very well. He knew how they function. And he was using ammo that he said he used pretty regularly. The ammo that he described using was called Federal. Federal's a very common ammo that is used in basically practice shooting. I have tons of Federal ammo actually at my house right now that I use when I go to the range. Still a reliable ammo for a Second Amendment advocate enthusiast to use. So he leaves his house around 8 p.m. He arrives at his location where he's going to be shooting at, say, around 8:45. He begins setting up his plethora of weaponry on the back of his truck and gets ready to start firing. His first weapon that he pulls is a pistol. When he takes aim and pulls the trigger, the gun does not fire. He racked the weapon, went to the next round, and pulled the trigger again. The weapon still didn't fire. He did this about 7 times before he gave up on his pistol. I guess in the back of his mind, he just thought that, maybe that there was something wrong with the pistol, or maybe the ammo that he had. Ammo nowadays is usually pretty reliable. To pull the trigger on a pistol 7 times with 7 different rounds, and for each round not to go off, is, to me, an indication of a malfunction within the pistol itself. Maybe a firing pin was removed. Maybe a firing pin was damaged. However, he said that he takes very good care of his weapons. He went on to his next weapon. It was an 1851 Colt Navy revolver. He went through the same process again. He pulled the trigger, nothing happened. He dismissed it as just saying, well, this weapon's kind of a piece of crap anyway. I'm not gonna, mess with it anymore. Now, he had looked up on the ridge earlier in the night and had seen some sort of big, dark figure. He dismissed it as possibly being some sort of coyote or some sort of desert animal, and just kind of thought, well, once I start firing, this animal is going to take off. Then he gets to his favorite hunting rifle. Now, for those of you all who are gun enthusiasts, everybody's got their favorite hunting rifle. It's often an extension of you. You know exactly how this gun functions. You know how it sounds every time you load around into the weapon. You know how it feels. You know how it smells. You know every little detail about this weapon. But when he went to go fire it, nothing happened. He said he brought 2 stripper clips, each loaded with 5 rounds of ammunition. So he went through the first set, nothing happened. He went through the second set, and nothing happened. At this point, he was really kind of concerned about something else kind of going on. He began working through his 1858 carbide, his 1858 single action, his Kentucky rifle, his 1847 Walker, his 38 Special, his 30-30, and every other weapon that he had brought with him on this shooting trip. And with every single weapon, he had the same issue. The weapon would not fire. At this point, he's totally bewildered. He doesn't understand how so many different weapons could have malfunctions all at the same time. But then he noticed a pungent smell in the air. He said that the smell was so foul that he could almost taste it. And then all of a sudden, he started to hear footsteps. So after he noticed this horrible smell and he hears the footsteps, he looks up and he starts to see these figures on an adjacent hill to where he saw the initial big black figure earlier in the evening. He said that there's 2 or 3 of them. He looks down in the valley and sees an additional 5 more. He says in unison, all these figures begin to move towards him all at once. And that's when he panics and he takes all of his weapons. He pushes them in the back of his truck. He closes the gate, runs around, jumps in, and goes to start his engine. He turns over the engine in his truck, a truck that, again, he knows very well, has never had any problems with, and all of a sudden the truck won't start. He turns the ignition over and over and over, and the ignition won't start. At this point, he's totally panicked, and he's gripping onto the steering wheel, and he said that he felt like God's presence stepped in and said, "Oh, hell no, I'm getting you out of this situation," and instantly the truck starts. So he floors the truck, spinning out, flying through the desert. He said he's traveling at least, he never dips under 30 miles, bouncing, all through the rough terrain, hitting cacti and whatever else, and trying to bust ass to get back to the main highway, which is about a 20-minute drive from where he was planning on firing his rifles. So eventually he hits the highway. He's doing like 100 miles an hour, and he looks down at the clock and he sees that it's 1 o'clock in the morning. He calls his girlfriend and he calls his buddy, and he's frantically trying to explain what is happening and what's going on. Both of them are totally confused. They don't understand what he's talking about. And he rushes back to his house. When he gets back to his house, he starts going through all of his ammo. He's trying to figure out some sort of malfunction either with the weapons or with the ammo. He goes through and he cannot find anything wrong. Each one of the rounds is loaded properly. The primers are correct. There's nothing wrong with any of the ammo. He also goes through his rifles and his pistols. There's nothing wrong with any of his weaponry. Now, his biggest concern, after seeing and experiencing all of this craziness out in the middle of the desert, was that he lost 3 hours of time. He has absolutely no explanation to how he went from 9:45 starting to try to shoot to 1 a.m. Later on, he decides that he's going to go back to this location, and he brings one of his closest friends with him. Once they get to the location, they start looking around, and they're looking for any type of indication of some sort of creature or person living out in the desert. He discovers a couple areas where he believes that coyotes or javelinas have been nesting. He notices a couple trees that have been broken, massive trees, and arranged in a way to where they're kind of blocking out the sunlight, so it creates some sort of shelter. To this day, he has no explanation of what happened that evening in the desert. However, I think that we can all agree on this channel that something that would be that powerful is really amazing. Now, he reached out to me because he's looking for answers. He's trying to figure out what happened to him that night. He said that he has kept this story quiet for years, that he was afraid that people might kind of look at him differently, because obviously experiencing something like this out in the desert can be extremely traumatic. I hope you all enjoyed this episode of the Paranormal Journals. I absolutely loved this story. It was really fascinating, and I want to say thank you so much for sharing it with me and with the channel. So, if you all are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Definitely give this video a like and turn on notifications. That way you know that I'm out here running my mouth or doing something crazy again on the channel. Again, thank you all so much for your amazing support. I hope you all have a great rest of the night, and until next time.